Okay, I believe we're now on air. So let me start again. Good morning, everyone, for following us from Spain and elsewhere in Europe. And well, good afternoon to those of you following us from China. My name is Helika Jürgensen, and I work for China IPR SME Help Desk. I will be today's webinar moderator. Well, I hope that everyone can hear me, but I would now like to welcome you to today's exciting webinar entitled Understanding Counterfeits Online and Chinese IP Protection. This webinar is jointly organized by Redpoints and China IPR SME Help Desk. During the webinar, we will discuss potential issues that European SMEs can face in the booming e-commerce sector in China and provide practical tips and advice on how to deal with these issues. Throughout the presentation, we are looking forward to a lively discussion, so get in touch by typing in questions and comments using the question box on your screen. So let me first introduce you the China IPR SME Help Desk. We are a project funded by the European Union, and our services are free of charge to all European SMEs. We provide jargon-free, first-line confidential advice on intellectual property issues in China to European SMEs. Now, if we move on to the next slide, then you can see the range of our services on that slide. So if we move to the next slide, to give you an overview of our services, well, our services include an inquiry helpline, which allows you to ask us an IP-related question and receive a reply within 3 working days. Besides that, we also organize training events on various IP-related topics, ranging from general IP seminars to also industry-specific seminars, which are all held throughout the year across Europe and China. We also provide various IP materials, such as guides, fact sheets, infographics, and newsletters, and a case study catalog, which are all available for download from our website, www.ipr-hub.eu, where you can also find interactive e-learning models, a news section, and upcoming events. Please note that we also have a guide on e-commerce in China available for download from our website. As our newest, well, let's move on to the next slide. As our newest feature, I would also like to introduce you live chat, which offers a possibility to chat with our IPR advisor online and receive an instant reply to any of your IP-related question. Our IP advisor would be available every Tuesday and Thursday from 3 to 6. That is, of course, Beijing time. And of course, if you're already based in China, it is also possible to book a 20 minutes face-to-face meeting with our IPR advisor, either in Beijing or in Shanghai. The session is, of course, free of charge. Well, I will finish here the introduction of China IPR SME Help Desk, and you're welcome to check us out on www.ipr-hub.eu. And now, please allow me to introduce you to today's speakers. Our speakers today are Mr. Joan Porta, who is the Brand Protection Director in the Redpoints and China IPR SME Help Desk expert, Alex Carmon, who is the Managing Partner at GH IP and Legal Service. I will now give the floor to Mr. Carmon and Mr. Porta to briefly introduce themselves and the Redpoints as well as GH IP Legal Service, and to then start with today's presentation. Please, the floor is yours.
Hello, good morning everyone. This is Joan Porta from Redpoints. Thank you very much, Helika, for your introduction, and thank you very much for everyone for attending this webinar. As mentioned by Jimena, by Helika, my name is Joan Porta, and I work at Redpoints as a director of its brand protection services. Redpoints is a company specialized on intellectual property infringements online, on fighting counterfeits and online piracy through a proprietary technology and a team of legal experts. Alex, if you want to introduce yourself, we will then explain a short introduction on this webinar and the main topics that we will be covering. Thank you.
Thanks, Joan. Hello, everybody. First of all, I would like to thank the China API SME Desk and Red Points for hosting this joint webinar. My name is Alex Garmon. I am the managing partner of the firm GHIP and Legal Service in Shanghai, and we are a firm specialized in assisting SME companies, mostly on IP protection in China regarding either IP rights filing, but also infringements and enforcement due to counterfeits in China or other IP rights infringements. About the cover topics, I will do the introduction. We will talk about the common IP problems that SMEs are facing in China, keeping an eye into trademark squatting, also the risk associated to partners, and also situation of counterfeits. And for last, we will finish giving some best practices to protect your brand and IP in China, distinguishing between preventive measures and reactive measures. So maybe we start with the common IP problems, right? Okay, I will start explaining the common problems that SMEs are facing regarding IP protection. One of these problems is trademark squatting. When we talk about trademark squatting, we are talking about normally third parties, normally individuals, who will register a trademark in bad faith with one goal, which is selling the trademark to the original owner and obtain economic compensation. Squatters in China, they take advantage of what is called the so-called principle first to file, which basically means that the one who registers first the trademark is the one who has the rights in China, and in consequence is the one who can enforce the trademark rights. So it is important to remark that if you did not register your trademark in China, you do not own the trademark in this country, even though you have the same trademark register in other countries worldwide. So remember that if you don't have the trademark register, you will not be able to take any action legally. And actually, squatters are a threat not only to those companies who want to sell their products in China, which is the most common case, but actually are also a threat to those companies which only manufacture their products in China and then they export these products from China to overseas. For example, we have had some cases where OEM products bearing the brand of the client were blocked in customs. Let's say that the squatter could block the container in customs since it was exporting products who were bearing the brand owned by the squatter in China. So I think it is a good point to make people aware that either you want to approach China as a consumer market or as a manufacturing market, companies should protect their trademark rights in advance, regardless of the activity they develop in China. And especially nowadays, in the era of technology, our products are more exposed than ever, so risks of trademark squatting can come from many different sources, like internet sites, promotion materials of company, exhibition shows. And in particular, about the exhibition shows, I would like to say that companies, you must be very careful, because at present, many companies exhibit their products all over the world, and they do not even consider to apply for trademark registration in that country before they attend the show. And the truth is that nowadays, potential squatters are not only in China, they are everywhere. And the reality is that they are also attending shows in Europe or in America in order to target brands or designs of products. Actually, recently, a friend of mine explained me that in the furniture show held in Milan a few weeks ago, some companies even had private booths totally covered in order to hide their products, and they were controlling the people who could enter inside. And why is that? Well, that's because these companies, they are aware of the existence of the squatters, and I would like to, so they have to take measures in order to prevent them from having access to their products and brands. On the other hand, I would like to connect the squatting with the following slide, which is the risks associated to partners. We can move to the next slide. Well, about what we call here partners associated risk, sometimes, and actually is most of the time, potential squatters can be very close to you. We have experienced many cases where the squatter was indeed someone with a previous business relation with the owner of the trademark in the foreign country, the foreign company, and it happens most of the time. Then you have to be careful with any potential partners, and when I say partner, I mean it in the broadest sense. It could be a business partner in a joint venture. It could be your common or long-term supplier. It could be your distributor or agent, or it could be even your own staff in China. Actually, sometimes these partners, they take advantage of the trust of the company, and they offer to register the trademark for them as a favor. But in the end, what the partner does is to register the trademark under his own name instead of under the foreign company. So you must be careful about who are you doing business with, and I recommend you to obtain some previous information about these potential partners, do some previous investigation. And now I will pass the word to Joan, who is going to explain the problems of counterfeits.
Thank you, Alex. Exactly. We're going to focus now on counterfeit goods, which is a common topic these days, but still we think it's worth it talking a bit about it. We're going to talk a bit, we're going to give some numbers and some figures, and we're going to discuss also about some trends that we think are worth mentioning. On the first place, when we talk about counterfeit goods, I want to clarify that we're talking about fake products that are infringing either a trademark, a design, or a patent. As we probably all know, the problem of counterfeit goods has grown dramatically in the past decade, and it's expected to keep growing in the coming years. So just to drop a few numbers, according to the OECD and the European Union Intellectual Property Office, international trade in counterfeit and pirated goods in 2013 represented an industry worth $461 billion. That's about 2.5% of the world trade and 5% of the European Union imports. So, and a recent study actually by the International Chamber of Commerce and the International Trademark Association forecasts that the value of international counterfeit trade could reach $2.3 trillion by 2022. So it's obviously a huge problem, and a problem that keeps growing every day. Now, regarding these trends that we think are important to consider when we talk about counterfeits. In the first place, we want to say that this is no longer about luxury and very well-known brands anymore. Virtually every industry can be affected by counterfeits. So we've always heard about expensive handbags and watches and footwear and sunglasses, but we're now hearing about counterfeited toys, foodstuff, care airbags, pesticides, medical equipment. We work with clients from almost every possible sector and industry, and they're all affected by counterfeiting. Not only this, but also counterfeiting is harming companies from all sizes and all countries, even regardless of the economic value of their products. So we're seeing every day brands that they have their products with a retail price of $20 or even less, and they're being counterfeited on a large scale. So this is not only about luxury products only anymore. The second trend that we want to mention has to do, in fact, it's very much related to the topic of this webinar. It is that fact that even when counterfeiting is a global problem that originates in practically all countries in the world, China outstands as the largest producing economy of counterfeit goods. So plus 80% of the world's counterfeit goods are originating in China and Hong Kong, according both to the US Chamber of Commerce and the European Union Intellectual Property Office. This is an important point, and we'll be coming back to this later throughout the webinar. Finally, the third trend that we want to mention, the internet. We all know that the internet has become a major channel to promote and sell counterfeit goods, in fact allowing manufacturers, distributors, and retailers to reach a global audience, and while assuming very low risks and transaction costs. This trend is of course not new. It has been going on for a few years now, but it is clearly expanding every day, and not only expanding, it's also becoming more complex every day. We will have a quick look now on how counterfeiters operate online by taking a brief look at the main channels used to sell and promote fake goods on the internet. So the first channel, we have listed here the main channels into which we can categorize the sale and distribution of online counterfeits. The first category, we also believe it's the most relevant channel still nowadays, is what we call marketplaces. These would be sites like eBay, Amazon, AliExpress. These are platforms with multiple sellers that are usually offering a wide range of products. There are B2B marketplaces dedicated to wholesale, where we can often find manufacturers and large distributors. And we also have B2Cs and auction sites where business are engaging with final consumers. The second category, also very relevant, are what we call rogue websites. These are standalone sites operated by companies or individuals that they have been created for the sole purpose of selling fake goods. These sites are usually focused on selling a specific category of products, for example, watches or footwear, or sometimes they're even dedicated to selling products for one specific brand. And they will often be impersonating that brand and trying to pass as an official website. The third category, which is clearly becoming more relevant every day, is our social media sites, platforms like Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook. These sites, these platforms have been acquiring a lot of relevance these last years, and they're used both to sell counterfeits directly to consumers and also as a means to promote and advertise rogue websites and marketplace stores. We finally have e-shopping apps like Wish or Wanelo, just to name a few, which are also growing in popularity every day and are often littered with counterfeit goods, and classified ad portals like OLX, Avito in Russia that are often used to sell counterfeit goods in a smaller and more local scale. Finally, all these selling points and channels are promoted by counterfeiters through pay-per-click ads, social media groups and pages, instant messenger apps, blogs, forums, etc. So we can see that this ecosystem is quite complex, and it's also relevant to point out that depending on the industry that your company is or the size of your company and your problematics when we talk about counterfeits may differ, and some of these channels may be more or less relevant depending on these factors. We will come again later on this. We are actually going to see some examples of these channels that we've mentioned. But now that we've talked about the three common problems that companies are facing and experiencing, we will move to the next section and discuss about measures that can be adopted both preventively, so before the problems are raised, and reactively once the problems are already there. Alex will begin by talking about IP registrations in China.
Thanks, Joan. I will start talking about preventive measures that any SME companies can take in order to protect their IP rights. Actually, I think there are quite basic or easy measures that any SME can take are low-cost measures, so it's affordable for any company. And above all, the first preventive step that any company must take is to register the trademark before approaching China, regardless what's our purpose, whether selling or manufacturing. This simple step can prevent many problems in the future, and the most important is that we will be able to take legal actions in case of infringement. Besides, I have to say that at present the registration process in China has become smoother, so now it may take around 9 to 12 months if there is no incident in between. Before, due to the huge workload, the process could take 1 year and a half at least until you could get the approval of the trademark. But I want to remark here that the most important aspect, regardless how long takes the process, most important aspect is the date when the application was filed, since approval will be granted from the date of application. And we can go to the next slide. And for sure, registered trademark is a must. But when many people think about IP protection of products, the first idea coming to their mind is protecting trademark, of course. But in some cases, it's also recommended to register other IP rights that can improve the results when we take action against counterfeits. And I'm talking about some rights like patents, utility models, copyrights, or designs. In China, invention patents are protected for a period of 20 years, and the registration may take between 2 to 3 years. For utility models, they are protected for 10 years, and the registration may take around 9 months. Designs in China are registered as patent designs. Well, as I think everyone knows, they protect the physical appearance of a product, and they are protected for 10 years, and the registration may take around 9 months approximately. And copyrights are probably the weakest rights in this list, and even though For those who don't know, a copyright is born just by the creation of that work. So there, in practice, there is no need to do registration, but we have to prove. We have to prove the source. We have to prove that we created that work. So in some cases, it can be useful to do a formal registration of a copyright in order to have an evidence and in order to enforce some actions. On the other hand, there are other preventive actions that can be taken at the online stage, and Joan will explain now.
Yes, this is we believe quite a simple measure, preventive measure to take that any company can do, and we think it can help, especially it can help detect counterfeits at the right moment, so before the problem is too big and before it's too late. The idea here is that you can run periodical audits on online marketplaces and online sites that are known by selling counterfeit goods, and we recommend doing this because companies that are not aware of the existence of fake products or have detected only very sporadic cases can run these audits and, what we were saying, find out about the problem before it's too late. So let's talk about these audits. How could these audits take place? There are a few questions to consider. On the first place, we could ask, what are we looking for exactly? Well, according to the definition of counterfeit goods that we gave before, we need to keep in mind that we're not only interested in spotting fake products that are infringing our trademarks and using our trademarks, we're also interested in finding replicas or knockoffs that may not be using our trademarks but are infringing upon our industrial designs or patents. This may be a bit more tricky. We will see later with some searching tips how can we spot these products that are not using our trademarks. Second important topic is where should we be looking at, because obviously there are hundreds or thousands of sites online that could be selling counterfeits. Where should we be focusing on? Well, from the list of channels that we saw before that are mainly used by counterfeiters, we saw marketplaces, rogue websites, social media apps, classified apps, etc. In our opinion, marketplaces are the most relevant channel to consider, and this is particularly the case for small and medium companies that are being counterfeited on a smaller scale. So you should definitely be auditing the top-ranked marketplaces globally, and we're actually going to see some specific examples of Chinese marketplaces in a moment that are worth listing in your monitored sites. But besides marketplaces, if you want to go a bit further, you should definitely keep a close eye also on social media platforms, and not only running searches through on Twitter and Facebook, but particularly trying to identify and engage on groups that are dedicated to posting reviews and suggestions about counterfeit goods. And you will see that there are hundreds of groups out there. Specifically, if you can try to find groups that are dedicated to products of your same category or industry, this will for sure be relevant. A third issue that we can consider when running these audits is how often should we look? How often should we be searching every day for potential counterfeits? Should we do it once a year? Well, we usually recommend, and again, we're talking about brands that have not yet detected the existence of counterfeits or have only spotted very sporadic cases. We recommend running a complete audit of about, and this could take 10 to 15 marketplaces every 2 months. If we consider that one of these audits could take us around 2 hours, we're talking about dedicating 12 hours a year on this. So as we see, it's a very little effort that can report great benefits, because again, if we're able to detect counterfeits when they're just starting to appear, we will have a huge advantage that can help us save a lot of money. Finally, a few tips to run these searches on online marketplaces or even on social media sites. First of all, you will obviously be running searches using your brand's name, but go a bit further. Look also for the name of your most successful products or collections. Sometimes your brand will not be used, but these products' names will be used by counterfeiters on their product listings. Second tip is you could type the brand using common misspellings or write it phonetically as it sounds. because that's the way it's reproduced very often on counterfeit listings. Also, in some cases, counterfeiters are using specific keywords to refer to a brand. So instead of using the official name, they have a keyword to talk about that brand in order to make monitoring a bit harder and detection of counterfeits a bit harder. You can usually find these lists of brand keywords in specialized blogs about marketplaces, about counterfeits, and these blogs are easily to find through Google. So we recommend searching whether your brand is on any of these blogs. It will also mean that you clearly have a problem on counterfeit goods. Third tip, when we're trying to spot replicas, as we said, so products listings and that are not using your trademarks, we should do this. A way to do this is by running searches using generic words that are commonly used to refer to your category of products. So for example, if we're a manufacturer of design lamps, try using tags like pendant lighting or table lamp, and for other categories, tags that are used like soccer jerseys or cleanser device, silicone molds. Try to run searches. Obviously, the accuracy of the results, you'll have to go through many more results, but it's the way to spot replicas that are not using your brands, and this is a very common practice based on our experience. Finally, and this is very important when you search in Chinese marketplaces, specifically on domestic Chinese marketplaces that are only on Chinese, like Taobao, for instances, you should make sure that you run searches in Chinese. You're going to be missing, for sure, a lot of listings, a lot of stuff if you're only searching in English or with the Latin alphabet. So you can run these searches either with the assistance of someone who speaks Chinese. If you don't have that possibility, you can always try simply using an online translator and translating your brand's name or these generic tags that we were mentioning, and trying to run searches with these tags in Chinese. We're going to see now on the next slide a list of relevant, these are only Chinese marketplaces, so obviously there are many other marketplaces to consider from other countries, but as we saw at the beginning, because China because plus 80% of the counterfeit goods are originating in China, these sites, many of these counterfeits are coming from these marketplaces. So these are marketplaces that you should definitely keep an eye and keep your radar on them. We have classified them in 4 categories according to the first list that we presented. So B2B marketplaces, these are wholesale marketplaces. You will oftenly find the manufacturer or very large distributors here with very large stocks. On B2C and C2C marketplaces that are addressed to final consumers, we have the longest list here. A few social media platforms that are worth keeping an eye on. Youpu and Weibo, especially Youpu, this past year has become a very, very well known and very used by counterfeiters, especially to promote their store shops and their websites. And finally, if we want to have an instant messaging app like WeChat, it's also worth it keeping an eye on this. So we would recommend picking up 5 or 10 of these sites here, maybe a few from each category, and then complementing this with sites from other countries. Especially, we should consider where our consumers are, and then pick up marketplaces and sites that attract a lot of traffic from those countries. So if your main market is in South America, for instance, make sure that you're monitoring Mercado Libre or other Mexican and South American sites that are very relevant there and may not be so relevant in other countries. So running audits in this time, we saw it's little effort and can report high benefits. It's something that anyone can do. You don't need to hire anyone or have an employee only dedicated to this. We said about 12 hours a year, and you may be able to detect the problem before it's too late. Alex will now talk about other preventive measures, about agreements with partners and offline, and then we will move forward with the reactive measures that we can start applying once we have detected the problem.
Great. Thanks, Joan. As we said before, we have to be careful with our partners, and one way of keep some control on them is to sign with them some key agreements, contracts. through different kinds of contracts like non-disclosure agreements or non-competition or trademark license agreements, we can regulate the terms of use of the IP rights, or we can even prevent someone from disclosing some confidential information. For instance, if our partner is going to make use of our trademark in China, definitely we should sign a trademark license agreement and state very clearly the terms of the license, terms of use, and above all the penalties in case of breach. On the other hand, I know that many of you will say that contracts are not useful, that they don't guarantee there won't be any infringement. And it is true that a contract doesn't mean a full guarantee that we won't have any problem, but indeed they are useful, and they will make it easier when we want to take actions against the infringer. In parallel, we also advise clients to run audits on factories in order to check not only if they are making a proper use of the trademark, we have license to them, but also to find out if these factories are producing an excess of stock. It is very common that official suppliers of well-known brands overproduce, and then the excess is sold through different counterfeit channels. We also advise to investigate main exhibition fairs of your sector to check whether they are offering counterfeits for sale. Besides, some major fair organizers in China have special proceedings to report and to act against the infringers, and we could get results like closing the booth and even seize the goods. And once the infringement has happened, then we need to act as fast as possible. Then we need to start the reactive measures. There are different actions that we can adopt at different level, and depending on the results that we are looking for. For example, on trademark disputes, we can, before the trademark office, China Trademark Office, we could file actions like opposition action. Opposition action is filed against a trademark published by the China Trademark Office during a publication period of 3 months. Another action we can file is the non-use cancellation against trademarks who have not been used in the market for 3 years. Or we could even file an invalidation action when we want to cancel a trademark which has been registered in bad faith. We have had some recent case where we could invalidate one trademark register, which was owned by our client in another country, but our client didn't register in China. On the other hand, I think it's also useful to register a trademark before the China customs in order to be able to block exports of any counterfeited products. Have to say that normally customs authorities are very into helping companies. They show a very good attitude in order to stop any counterfeited goods, and they can even be trained in order to detect the counterfeited goods in an easier way. And in case of counterfeits, normally the first goal of the trademark owner for sure is always to stop the infringement as soon as possible. In that case, once we know about the infringement, well, we have an administrative action, administrative proceeding, which is aimed to do a raid. And the result of the raid will be to seize and destroy the infringing products, and there will be a penalty for the infringer. But the most important thing before reporting the infringement to relevant authority, which is the Administration of Industry and Commerce, most important thing is to perform before an investigation and collect as many evidence as possible. Even though Chinese authorities now are also having very good attitude to pursue IP infringements, I say it's crucial to make a good investigation. I mean, the investigation is going to be made mainly by the company. You have to be proactive. You need to collect evidence, and only this way we can ensure that the raid action can be successful. On the other hand, investigations take time. Sometimes they can take several months, depending on each case, because it is important to choose the right moment to start the raid start the raid action. And as an SME, since we don't have a very big budget for this kind of IP protection actions, we have to choose very well the target, and we have to be effective in the actions that we perform. And then on the judicial stage, after administrative action, we could also file a civil or criminal lawsuit against the infringer. Basically, just to make the difference, civil action is aimed to obtain a compensation of damages by the infringer, and the criminal action is aimed to take the infringer to jail. And for sure, it's the most persuasive actions we can take, because we can only open a criminal we can only open a criminal process depending on the value of the infringing goods. And for this reason, sometimes the authorities can be a bit restrictive when deciding whether an infringement can be taken to criminal stage or not. And now Joan is going to introduce the reactive measures that can be taken on the online stage.
Yes, thank you, Alex. Right. So exactly, we're now gonna focus on the different possibilities that we have when we spot counterfeits online on these marketplaces or sites that we've been seeing before. There are basically well, there are in fact many different possibilities when it comes to online enforcement, but we will focus now and name two that are perhaps the more significant and that can be carried out at reasonable costs. Although some of these actions can be undertaken directly by some of the company's employees, we strongly recommend seeking legal advice before engaging in any of these activities. So the two approaches or the two measures that we can adopt to fight online counterfeits that we're going to talk about are, on first place, takedowns and reporting tools available on marketplaces, and then we will talk a bit about cease and desist letters that can be sent to offenders. Regarding takedown tools and reporting tools, when we detect a counterfeit listing online, we should explore whether the specific site or platform where the listing has been detected has any system in place to report intellectual property infringements. That's because many platforms, as an example, almost all of the platforms that we saw before, all the Chinese marketplaces that we saw before, they have built systems for right holders to report counterfeits or other contents infringing their intellectual property. By using these tools, this can be an effective way to tackle down counterfeit listings quickly and at a very low cost, especially when the volume of infringing listings is still low. So if we've detected a few dozens of counterfeit listings, for instances, on Taobao, on Alibaba, a possibility is just to find out how the reporting system on Alibaba works. You need to register, you need to submit some documentation. In about 1 or 2 weeks, you should have validly registered, and then in about 1 or 2 weeks, you could have those listings removed. So this could be, as we say, a quick and efficient way to report listings, especially when the problem is still not too big. Another possibility as an alternative is drafting and sending cease and desist letters to sellers that are offering counterfeit goods. We can send legal requests to the seller or to from marketplaces, for instance, or we can also send them to administrators of specific websites or social media pages. Although these letters may be a bit more time-consuming and expensive to prepare and send, it may also be more effective in some cases, especially when we've detected relevant sellers, sellers with large stocks or a wide variety of products, and we want to make sure that we eradicate the problem, that we don't just close their listings and find them again the next day. And also it's a way to go a bit further of the simple removal of the listing. So for instances, if we want to seek for compensation, or if we want to obtain information from that seller on where he has what his source, where he has obtained the products, how many sales did he have, how many revenues, approaching this with a cease and desist letter can allow us to obtain these other informations. There are, as we said, other ways. It's always having a comprehensive and a coherent strategy when you're enforcing online is critical to be successful, knowing all the actions available and combining them depending on the type of infringement. It's not the same fighting counterfeit goods than fighting patent infringements or design infringements, and it also depends on the type of channel that you're addressing to. It's not the same removing listings from a marketplace than from a social media page, from a rogue website. This can differ, and you really need to know how to address each of these issues. Last point that I wanted to make here, coming back to what Alex has been talking about in several occasions during the webinar, is the importance of having Chinese IP registrations to fight online counterfeits. This is because even when some of the marketplaces that we saw before, Chinese marketplaces, they will process complaints based on a European or US IP registration, many others and especially the ones that are what we call domestic Chinese marketplaces, like Taobao, for instance, that are only in Chinese and that are mainly addressed to the Chinese market. They will only accept complaints based on registered Chinese trademarks or IP registrations. So basically, without them, our possibilities to remove listings from these platforms will be very narrow. It won't be. We may have alternatives, but very few. So this is another reason to have your trademark and your intellectual property registered in China, because as we said also, many of these marketplaces are often the source, the origin of counterfeits. So you really want to make sure that you're able to enforce there. And finally, and this is a bit as a way to close this webinar, we've been talking a lot about online and offline, both problems and reactions or strategies. And we've been talking about online and offline separately. Alex has been covering the offline, and I've been covering the online channels. However, we want to end up making a point on the importance of coordinating our offline and online actions and strategies when it comes to protecting and enforcing intellectual property rights. So making sure that both strategies are aligned is a key to success in the fight against counterfeits and other forms of IP infringements. For instance, when we're talking about when we're monitoring online sellers and we're detecting online counterfeiters, it's critical to have a system and being able to identify top offenders. These are sellers that they might be large distributors. Sometimes you can even spot the actual manufacturer and producer of the fake goods. These are sellers that often have very large stocks or very low prices, or they have multiple sales channels, large traffic or consumer engagement. You want to make sure that you identify these top offenders, and you may want to, instead of just taking down their listings, you may want to coordinate offline and check whether they have factories, whether they have physical stores. You may want to build cases against them. You don't just want to take down their listings. Maybe you want to take them to court. You want to ask for compensations, make sure that they don't infringe upon your IP again in the future. So this is online to offline, and again, when we're spotting counterfeit goods offline, either on raids, we're detecting physical stores, customs controls. It's also critical not just to stay on the offline, but to investigate these companies' online presence. And if we have names from individuals, if we have names from companies, we may have phone numbers, physical addresses. We can use these to investigate online and see whether these companies or individuals also have online selling points that are worth closing down or detecting. We can use reverse whois for this, search engine searches, social media, etc. So we just wanted to end up with this point and about the criticality and the importance of coordinating when you have a problem with counterfeit and with IP infringement, coordinating both your online and your offline strategies. And well, we left here some of our takeaway messages. We've been going a lot through these topics again and again. The importance of adopting IP protection strategies, securing your IP rights as a first step, so making sure you register your trademark. I wanted to, complementing what Alex said, we're working with many companies that are small, medium-sized companies from the US, from Europe. They are young companies that have had a lot of success in a very short period of time, and many of them have had the same problem of trademark squatting that Alex was mentioning at the beginning. They found their trademark has been registered in China, and now they need to go through the whole process of trying to filing an opposition to this trademark, and meanwhile they have problems trying to export products from there. They cannot enforce their rights on specific marketplaces, so it is a very serious issue for them. Running periodical online checks, as we saw, and when you detect infringements, unless it's something very punctual, very sporadic, seek for legal advice and legal professionals. There are solutions both to offline and online counterfeits that may assist you when the problem has become too large for you to deal directly with it. This is the end of this webinar, and now I think Halika from the IPR desk will give us a last few words.
Hi, so I'm back again, and well, do we have a Q&A session? Because because okay, I actually have one question concerning the IPR issues. Let's say that there's an SME who has registered their trademark in their English version of the trademark in China, and then they haven't registered a Chinese version, but now on the websites or on those marketplaces, they actually find counterfeits that use the brand name Chinese version that is very similar, like a transliteration of that English brand. What can those companies do in those cases? Maybe you could give an answer.
Okay. Yeah. Well, first we have to say that any trademark in, let's say, in Chinese characters is different than a trademark in Western alphabet, let's say. Okay. So if we want to protect also our trademark in the Chinese version, Chinese character version, we should register the trademark in Chinese characters. It is true that there are some trademarks who they do the transliteration in China in Chinese, but in these cases, in order to take actions, they should register the trademark in Chinese first, and then take action against those shops or those infringers that are using that name.
All right, thank you, Alex. I don't know, Halika, do you want to add something else? We have a few more questions here, yes, that we can read out loud and answer to them. But I don't know, Halika, if you wanted to add something to this.
No, thank you. It was the question that we very often do receive in China IP SME help desk, and then I was also interested in the answer. So please, you can read out other questions.
Sure, we have a question here from Max Wilson, who asks, how can your system understand whether you see a counterfeit item or original? What if you remove a legitimate one? Thanks. Well, I assume he's talking about online counterfeits, and he's talking about how through our monitoring processes of detection of counterfeit goods, how can we tell whether a specific listing is indeed a counterfeit or it's a genuine product? And well, it's true, this is one of the challenges that we face. I would say that there are some cases, well, we usually work, our systems, our monitoring systems work we have a whole list of indicators, counterfeit indicators that we use. So there are specific sites that are blacklisted, and this obviously increases the possibility that any product there is a counterfeit. The fact that a product is originating in some specific countries may also be an indicator. The fact that a seller has very large stocks, very low prices, they're using specific images, all these are generic indicators. And then we also build, for each brand that we work with, we build with their own indicators. So especially regarding, they provide us with full information on how to detect or spot counterfeits and differentiate them from genuine. Still, I would say that there are some cases when you're dealing with online offers, that some cases which are very obvious and very easy to validate, and there are some cases that, a few cases sometimes, depends a lot on the brand and their products, but they are very difficult to tell, even by the brand and by their own teams. So because they're using official images, the prices are very similar to that brand's retail price, and it's very hard to tell, and sometimes there's no option left but to place a test purchase and receive the product and process it. But this is usually a minority of the cases. Most of the cases can be dealt and validated just by seeing the product offer and the seller's details. Thank you. Okay, we have another question here for Alex. This is, someone is asking, can I register my trademark in China through the WIPO, the World Intellectual Property Office, with an international application? Yeah, and if it's worth it doing it this way. This is for Alex. Thank you, Alex.
Yeah. Okay. Yes, you can do that. Actually, China is a member of the Madrid system, and you could file an international application through WIPO, including China as one of the countries where you register. But I would like to say that, in my opinion, if China is a strategic country for you, it may be better to file a direct application in China instead of doing through the international application. Why do I recommend this? Well, there's two reasons. One reason is that even though all these countries follow the NIST classification, the truth is that in China the classification of China has some slight differences in the subclassification of each class. So depending which items we choose when you register the trademark, there may be some discrepancy between the international application and the list that the Chinese Trademark Office is using. And on the other hand, if we file the application through YPO, for sure it's going to take a longer time, at least 6. I would say maybe at least 6 more months to obtain the registration certificate. And I think it's important to make sure that you can get the trademark registration certificate as soon as possible. Above all, if you think you have to take some enforcement actions, because the trademark certificate is the first thing you have to present in order to file any even administrative action. For example, we had a case of one client. They had registered a trademark in China through YPO a long time ago, like 10 years ago, and they detected they were selling some counterfeits online in China. So we were doing investigation, and when we wanted to file the action before the Administration of Industry and Commerce, we couldn't start the action because it happened to be that at that time they had to apply for the renewal. So the renewal was approved, but since the process had been done through YPO, we had to wait for the Trademark Office to return the renewal certificate to YPO, and then YPO to us. So the same problem you may have when you want to do some actions online. We have experienced also some cases with some online platforms like Taobao that they haven't recognized not even a certificate issued by the YPO saying that the trademark has been approved. They always require you to provide the trademark certificate. So that's why I think that if China is going to be a strategic country for you, I think it's worth to file an independent application.
Okay, thank you very much, Alex. Thank you very much. I think we've been running for almost an hour, so I think there were a few more questions, but I think it's time to end. You can if anyone has additional questions, you can contact us through redpoints.com or through the China IPR Help Desk website, and we will be happy to assist you and to answer to any questions concerning this webinar.
Yeah, well, thank you everyone for attending the webinar, and also thank you, Sean, and thank you, Alex, for this very, very interesting presentation. I believe that we all learned a lot today. So this presentation, as Sean mentioned, will be made available on the RedPoint website, and of course China IPR SME Help Desk will be sharing this information and the link to the recording on our social media channels like Facebook, Twitter, and LinkedIn. You can see all this information here on the slide. So keep your eyes open and search for information, and you'll definitely find the recording. So I guess that's it from us today. Well, have a nice day, and goodbye from us.
Thank you everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.